time for Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome on into Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle. I am your host, Trey Lyle. A little bit later on, Stephen Stumpf, who is live in Indianapolis, will join us for a great conversation about the latest headlines. A lot going on in the Xfinity Series, so we'll talk about that, plus our thoughts on Bubba Wallace winning in Indianapolis. He'll be a part of our soundbite of the week, and then we'll, of course, wrap it up with the checkered flag and our final thoughts. But first, we have a great interview this week for Into the Inferno. Of course, this week, NBC is taking over NASCAR coverage. You can tune in to NBC Sports NASCAR coverage this Sunday, 3:30 p.m. on the USA Network for the Iowa Corn 350 powered by ethanol. Is actually the 200th race. That's a stat, by the way. Shout out to Stephen, who we'll have on later. Sizzling stat, as he used to say. The 2000 Cup Series race for NASCAR on NBC since they've rejoined as a partner in the summer of 2015. But Lee Diffey, we go into his career, how he got into the sport, timeline of events, including the fact he was a PE teacher at one point. He used to race motorcycles at one point as a young kid, and as well as, of course, him doing the Olympics, as well as every other big race you could think of outside of one, which he mentions as we have Lee Diffey head into the Inferno.
Now it's time for
You've got to go back a long, long way for Kyle Busch. 2008, the last time he won here at Daytona. And now he is tantalizingly close to that victory. But here comes Harrison Burton for the Wood Brothers. He's being pushed by Parker Retzlaff. And the 23-year-old from Huntersville, North Carolina is at the front of this field and may race his way into the playoffs. Busch goes low, Burton blocks, he gets back up, comes to the line. Jeff, your little boy, has done it. Harrison Burton wins in Daytona.
To Go Into the Inferno with Trey.
Welcome into the Inferno. Part of Bringing the Heat is Lee Diffey, play-by-play for NBC Sports. You can tune in to NBC's Sports' NASCAR coverage this Sunday, 3:30 p.m. on the USA Network with the Iowa Corn 350 powered by ethanol. By the way, fun fact about this will be the 200th Cup Series race since NBC has returned as a NASCAR media partner since the summer of 2015, first race of the season. Lee, thanks so much for joining us. Second year now, full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series, being the lead play-by-play announcer. What was year one like, and what is how are you feeling about heading into year two of doing this?
Super excited, Trey, about the year ahead. Thanks for having me on the show, by the way. And the memory of year one was just crazy. I went into it with a teeny bit of NASCAR experience many years ago, some Xfinity races and just a couple of Cup races. And then after, some 7 years away to come back to it and do those final 12 races was really great. The picture behind me shows the first moment with Harrison Burton, racing his way into the playoffs and getting his first Cup win. So that, for me, very much set the tone of those 12 races because it just kept coming. Chase Briscoe's win, Larson's dominance at Bristol, the Bowman disqualification, Joey back in, and then Logano goes all the way to win his third title. I mean, there were so many. The Watkins-Glen race, between Chris Buescher and Shane Van Gisbergen. I mean, the hits just kept on coming, and I felt really, really fortunate to have called those races.
Yeah, I want to ask you before we get into your career. Obviously, you go full-time IndyCar, then you make the transition after the Olympics, which is like pinch me moment, pinch me moment, pinch me moment. What was the transition like from going into IndyCar into NASCAR? Did you ever change, like, I don't see your philosophy, but like the style in which you would broadcast races, because they're very different despite the fact that they're both racing?
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's a good question. And the answer, in short, is no. I didn't change anything. Keeping my fundamentals the same was important, but also having to adapt to the different environment. Because if you think about in any 1 year, so just let's say last year, for example, I called Monster Energy Supercross, the Rolex 24 at Daytona as part of the IMSA WeatherTech sports car championship and multiple other races, as many IndyCar races as I could do leading up to the Olympics, the Olympic trials, the Olympic Games, and then to Cup. So lots of different styles of racing, but races have the same kind of skeleton, just a different body, and then you just have to adapt to those changing conditions. But as you know, through my enthusiastic style, I love calling races. I love competition, and just when things are as interesting as they were last year, and again this year, these final 14 races, and it's bringing back together the NBC Sports and NASCAR and NBC Sports family, because several of our members have been off with other broadcast partners, whether it be in the booth or on the host set or in the pit lane. But now it's bringing us all back together to celebrate, as you mentioned, that 200th show. And then, we have a very kind of short lead in with just the 4 races until the playoffs, and then we get to enjoy the playoffs again.
Lee Diffey from NBC Sports joining me here into the Inferno. So I did my best to make a list of things that you've called, and it's very impressive. You've called it the Indianapolis 500, the Monaco Grand Prix, the 24 Hours Le Mans, the 24 Hours at Daytona, the Southern 500. You could argue the most iconic race you did was the 100-meter dash at the Olympics. So you've called basically almost every major race in the world, whether it's on 2 legs, 2 wheels, or even 4 wheels. Is there something still on your bucket list of oh, I want to call that race. I want to just be a part of that broadcast. Is there anything still on that list?
Well, just to continue your list, the Bathurst 1000, I did that many times for V8 Supercars. I did MotoGP, I did World Superbikes, I did World Rally, and a lot of other things. But to answer your question, I'd love to be thrown into the inferno of the Daytona 500. Obviously, it doesn't work right now because of different networks. But hey, never say never. And I just think that would be awesome. I got to take my family this year and just watched, at the track as a fan. And my 2 teenage sons just were blown away. They thought it was phenomenal. And they don't have a deep motor racing history, but they've seen some pretty cool events like the Indy 500 and Supercross and various things like that. But when those cars fired up at Daytona and they saw it for the first lap, they couldn't believe it. So yeah, calling that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, just basically add to you would complete your own crown jewel list or the Triple Crown list if you get the Daytona 500. But looking at your early start, you actually raced motorcycles. When I was doing my research, this was something I did not know. What was that like for you? This was before your broadcasting career, I guess, gave you the racing itch, but you obviously were able to race motorcycles. What was that like?
Yeah, I just did it. As a kid, I started when I was 6 years old, and I did it. That was my sport until I was about 16 or 17. Then I stopped. My older brother kept racing, and all my buddies kept racing, and some of my oldest friends in life, they went on to become, serious in motocross, supercross, MotoGP. At one point in time, my 2 great mates from Australia, Mick Doohan and Daryl Beattie, were 1 and 2 in the MotoGP World Championship, and we all grew up as kids from Brisbane, Australia. So pretty neat. And then obviously I went down the commentary road, but I didn't grow up dreaming of that. It was kind of an accidental career, because when I stopped riding myself and focused on school, and I didn't go to school to become a journalist, or I didn't study journalism or communications or arts or anything like that. I was a teacher, and I still hung around the motorcycle scene. And when I was still at college, the local motorcycle club just asked me if I wanted to do some public address commentary, because I knew all the competitors. That was everybody I grew up with, and so I fell into it, and it just kind of it just grew from there. And so I feel very fortunate to have this accidental career and still be going all these years later.
Yeah, you perfectly transitioned for me into my next question, because I just wanted to go through the timeline of your career. You were a PE teacher when you first started broadcasting races, as you mentioned. Was there a specific moment in this journey where you realized oh, I might be pretty good at this? I need to I need to go all in and truly follow maybe this passion I have to become a racing broadcaster?
For sure. That moment where it became a reality was when I was still a school teacher, and I'd be in a completely different city and state, and I'd be trying to get home either late Sunday night or the first thing Monday morning to make it back for 8 a.m. assembly at school. And sometimes I didn't always make that. And so I was like, look, which way am I going to go? Am I going to keep trying to, satisfy both, because I really love teaching, even though I only did it for a brief period of time. But the commentary is what really got me excited. And as the jobs and the profile of the jobs grew, by the way, we're still not talking radio or television, just talking purely PA, public address. But, I went from local flat track motorcycle racing to then motocross to then supercross to then motorcycle road racing to then truck racing to then doing V8 supercars. Back then it was called Australian Touring Car Championship. And, from driving myself, I was now getting flown to different places by the track promoters. And so it was growing at a pretty rapid rate. And that's when I just said to my mum and dad, maybe I don't know. We don't know. They didn't know. They don't have a background in media or communications. And I just said, hey, what the hell? Maybe I just take a leave of absence from teaching and roll the dice and see how we go. And here I am talking to you almost 30 years later.
Well, I don't know if that's a good thing talking to me, but it seems that it was the right leap of faith in terms of where you got today. Obviously, you joined the BBC at one point, you joined Network 10 at one point, joined Speed, and then obviously since 2013 being a part of NBC Sports. Before we talk more about NASCAR, I do want to go back to last year. We were about a year ago was the Olympics, and it was your first time doing track and field. You did other events at the Olympics, both the winter and summer games. But being the lead track guy for the Olympic Games, I mean, you do the event at the Olympics. It's the 100-meter dash. It's like the event of the Olympics. It's to find out who's the world's fastest man and woman. What was that like preparation like? Because it's something that, very few people get to say they've done, let alone just like experience. What was that preparation like? And then you get an iconic finish with Noah Lyles, great last name. What was that like? And what was those moments leading up to, that finish like?
Wow, it's phenomenal. The Paris Games were my 6th Olympics. My 2nd Olympic Games doing track and field. We did Tokyo, which was probably one of the more bizarre experiences because we all went to Tokyo, heavily restricted as to where we could go and basically quarantined other than going to your venue, tested all the time. But, myself and my track and field teammates, legends, Addo Bolden, Sonia Richards-Ross, Kara Goucher, etc., we were working with the other broadcasters from around the world, and we were in a 70,000 seat stadium with nobody in it. So calling that 100 meters or 400 meters or whatever event it was in Tokyo with nobody there, to then fast forwarding to Paris last year, where there were just under 70,000 people, both morning session and night session. And the patriotism from the different countries from around the world, the locals. If there was any French athlete even closely or remotely getting close to making a final or getting a medal, the place, the Stade de France, was just crazy. So preparation is full on. We're really lucky to have a tremendous research team at NBC Sports, and that's per sport. So you would have a track and field team, you have a gymnastics team, you have a swimming team. And so NBC Sports equips us with everything that we need. From that, we have a group of researchers that are just phenomenal. So you have to really plow through it. You've really got to immerse yourself in it. And then when it comes time to talk about a specific athlete, a lot of the notes and a lot of the research you do never actually makes the air because there's no guarantee that an athlete will make it or not. And so you just have to do a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of soaking in. And then when the moment comes, try and use that information, when it's pertinent or when it's appropriate.
Was the prep for that you obviously, I'm assuming you were prepping basically all year for it, a whole year out before it because it's so much, but you also have to prep for the Indy 500. And then you also knew you were prepping for the start of this transition into NASCAR. How difficult was this last summer stretch for you where you're still calling IndyCar, you're about to call the Olympics, and you're about to call the home stretch of NASCAR for the first time. How difficult was that for you, or but did you like enjoy that challenge of like the faith that NBC put in me to tackle all three of these major things?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a huge compliment, and it's a huge honor, and it's also a huge responsibility, because you never want to let anybody down. You don't want to let yourself down, but you don't want to let the company, you don't want to let the fans, the viewers down, right? And so you've got to really dig deep on the homework. And I mean, I don't know whether this is correct or not. I just it was survival mode, so I just had to do it the best way that I could. So fortunately, Cup is simmering in the background the whole way through the year, even though when I was still calling Supercross and IMSA and IndyCar, I did get track and field lead-up events, most importantly, the Olympic trials. So I had my foot, on that side of the fence as well. And then once I got through the Olympics, I just had to compartmentalize, because I knew, Cup was getting larger and larger and larger, getting closer and closer and closer. And I just had to make sure that I got through IndyCar, the Indy 500, and then I could just apply myself to the Olympics. And when you're there, it's such a beast, and there's so much happening day after day after day. From the heats to the quarters to the semis to the the repêchages to the final. Like it's crazy every day. And some of my teammates get their work schedule changes because they might only do sprints or they might only do distance, but I'm there the whole time. So I've got to do everything. And then once I got done with Paris, fortunately, my bosses gave me a weekend off, which was the Michigan weekend. So when I got back from Paris, I had basically 2 full weeks just to go full bore to get ready for Daytona. But, it wasn't like I wasn't keeping an eye on it through the year as well. But that's keeping an eye on it is different to throwing yourself in and doing the necessary and proper homework. So it was a lot. It was a lot, but it was fun because it's a challenge, right? I haven't had a year like that in my career ever, to do so many marquee events and so many marquee events that get you excited. That you're just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I got this and this and this and this. So it was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun.
We're here with play-by-play broadcaster, motorcycle racer, and I will even say movie star, because he was part of his voice was used in the Formula One movie, obviously part of the 24 Hours of Daytona. But let's talk about NASCAR, and let's talk about a guy you're probably very familiar with, is SVG. Obviously, his rise in American racing, you know him from the Australian Supercars, so you're kind of the perfect person to understand like his upcome in Australian Supercars, and then the transition for you, who probably out of anyone that covers NASCAR probably knows his history the best. How shocked or surprised are you about how quickly he has been able to adapt to the NASCAR Cup Series and be so successful? I mean, he's tied for second in terms of wins this season with 3, which is just kind of unprecedented in terms of this kind of rookie season.
Not surprised, because just look at his countryman and his former enemy in Scott McLaughlin on the IndyCar side of things. Look at how well Marcus Ambrose did when he came. And if you can survive, if you can get to the top of V8 supercars is one thing, but then if you can sustain that and survive there for as long as Shane did, winning Bathurst 1000s, winning the championship multiple times, that sets you apart from everybody else. It's a highly competitive series and it's a tough series. And but he's not a one-trick pony. He wasn't just the supercars guy, because on the side he was racing. He was, before anybody even knew him here, he'd come to the Rolex 24 at Daytona several times. He'd done the Spa 24-hour. He would go back home to New Zealand and do rally events where he did really well. So I mean, he's a racer, he's a driver, he's a racer, he's an athlete. And look, it's almost like a key unlocking a door. If he can find that key to unlock what makes sense to him on ovals, I think look out. I don't think his oval results to date have reflected on occasion how well he's actually done. There's been many times so far this year where he's been wrong place, wrong time, boom, caught up in a wreck, caught up in somebody else's wreck. There's been times where he spun by himself. He will be the first person to tell you, what a steep learning curve it is. But I just think for all of us, I don't think we should just write him off and say, oh, he's the road course guy and that's it, because he's far more than that. So I hope I hope to see him, get a good top 10, maybe get a top 5. Who knows what he can do on an oval once it really starts to click. And at the end of the day, I think for people who may not be so patient with him, or they might just say, oh, he's only good on road races. Let's keep in mind, it's only his second year here. And last year was a jumbled up year doing Xfinity and then having to jump in the Cup car, which he said was so different. It was such a challenge. And then this has been his first full-time year in Cup. So, I mean, to be in that, pretty lofty position that he's at already, albeit courtesy the road course stuff. And by the way, that's not easy either, right? For the full-time Cup guys are all good road racers these days. So the old days of a road course ringer bringing in several road course ringers, the regular Cup guys are phenomenal road racers themselves now. So I think it's even more impressive when you've got this caliber of field and SVG can do what he's done.
Lee, looking at the season so far, we've had a fun NASCAR season to this point. We're coming off Bubba Wallace's big win at the Brickyard, which was very impressive, and in terms of what he had to do late. You've obviously followed along throughout the season. What are your overall thoughts on the season so far? Because y'all are picking it up at a really good time for the sport, with the playoff race heating up and coming off of a pretty big statement win by the 23 team coming off at Indianapolis.
I think it's awesome. I think where we're to use your words, where we're picking this up at is a phenomenal point of the championship. I've loved everything that we've seen this year. I think what Denny has shown us, what Denny Hamlin has shown us, has been fantastic. Even the most recent race at the Brickyard 400 had that big wreck earlier in the weekend. Came back in a backup car, started at the back, in the closing stanza of the race. He's there, but also for him and for Bubba, with all of the legal noise swirling around about the lawsuit, to just be able to put their helmets on and to go and do what they've been doing, I think makes it even more remarkable. I feel really pleased for Bubba Wallace that he finally gets a landmark win like that, and especially in the nature that it happened, where there was some question mark over the fuel. Did he have enough? Was he going to make it? Can you imagine if he didn't make it? It'd be like another blow. I think for his persistence and his skill and his time in the sport, nobody deserves anything. You have to earn it. But for me, he did deserve that. He's been around long enough. He's done so much. He's a terrific ambassador, and he finally has that big landmark win, which is really good for him, for his team, for the sport, and for the fans. I like the fact that we've had 13 different winners. I love it when we mix it up. Yes, there's been a bunch of guys at the top with multiple wins. No worries, that's kind of standard fare. But we got one more win than we did at this stage last year. There's a tremendous intra-team battle at RFK on the bubble, between Chris Buescher and Ryan Preece. There's still people yet to win. We haven't seen Tyler Reddick win yet this year. Can we see that elusive win for Kyle Busch? Brad Keselowski's had a couple of top fives lately, although when you look at the big picture of his year and where he is in the standings, it paints a bit of a different picture, but he's had some bad luck. So what's Brad got, over these closing 4 races leading into the playoffs? So I think wherever you turn, wherever you look, there's so many cool things happening. I said this in an interview earlier today, that I think Christopher Bell he has not forgotten what happened last year, and that fire still burns deep in him that he wasn't there in the championship for. And so keep an eye on the 20. I love what Chase Briscoe's done this year, with his new team at JGR, and to see that Bass Pro Shops 19 back at the front and consistently. He's qualified unreal. He's got that win. He's in the playoffs. Josh Berry. I mean, I could go on. There's so many awesome things. Just get us to Iowa and drop that green flag.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, the final question is for the fans, what's to look at? You kind of painted the playoff picture kind of perfectly as you head into this final stretch. kicking off this Sunday, 3:30 p.m. on the USA Network with the Iowa Corn 350 powered by Ethanol, the 200th race in the NASCAR Cup Series for NBC since they returned in the summer of 2015. For fans, for you guys, obviously you got to see all the new partners these last 10 races, and Amazon and TNT, and obviously your booth partners. Steve Letarte was in the booth the whole time, and Jeff Burton was a part of the TNT alt cast. So I know you're pumped to join your guys in the booth, but what to expect from you guys as you head into this final stretch of the season in terms of what NBC wants to do with the rest of the NASCAR season?
Well, look, what we want to do is the best possible show we can for the fans. That's first and foremost. And, since we've said farewell and congratulated Joey Logano after Phoenix last year, our team, who are people that you don't know their faces and you may see their names in press releases or what have you, our entire team, our boss, Jeff Benke, Renee Hatlerlid, the producer, the director, Sean Owens, and everybody behind the scenes has been working really hard ever since to fine tune and to try and improve. And it can be graphics looks, it can be different camera angles, it can be the anatomy of a pit stop. Just always everybody contributes. So you mentioned Steve and Jeff, they're phenomenal contributors, but everybody, Marty Snyder, Dave Burns, Kim Kuhn, Parker Kligerman, everybody, our whole team, it's roll up your sleeves, let's get in, let's share some ideas, let's see what we can do. And it's a terrific family. We love being on the air together. We love traveling together. It's a really cool group of people who love racing, love NASCAR, and love trying to, we have fun on air. Hopefully that's evident. We enjoy a laugh, all of us, but we enjoy calling this awesome form of racing. And hopefully for all of your listeners, and over the next 14 weeks, we're going to have some awesome stories to tell. And it all funnels down into that championship four and to see who's going to be this year's champ.
Well, Lee, I will leave you with this compliment from a NASCAR Hall of Famer. We had Mark Martin on one of our other podcasts, the Happy Hour podcast. If you missed that, check that out wherever you get your podcast or on the Front Stretch YouTube page. He wanted to tell you that he enjoys your calls and you're doing a great job. So that is a message from Mark Martin. So I appreciate the time, and thanks so much for joining me today, and good luck this season. And I'll hopefully see you at the track, maybe at least at Martinsville. Hope to see you there.
That was that would be great. Thanks for having me on the show. Please thank Mark for me, and maybe we can have a Martinsville hot dog together. I had my first one last year, and my first one was cold, and then somebody brought us some hot ones later, so I did get to have a hot dog. So we'll see you at Martinsville, and thanks for having me on your show.
Did you have all the fixins? Did you have the slaw, the chili, the mustard, everything? Or
no, I didn't go full on. I just I kind of had a pretty basic one, but I'll go the whole deal with you if you like. I'll try the lot.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks so much, Lee, and you have a good day and a good season.
Thanks.
Thanks so much to everyone at NBC Sports. I want to thank John at NBC Sports. I want to thank Lee as well for giving us some time. We went a little long in the interview, so do appreciate him giving me some time on a Wednesday for that, that's when we recorded it. Reminder, you can tune in for NBC Sports NASCAR coverage this Sunday at 3:30 p.m. on the USA Network with the Iowa Corn 350 powered by Ethanol. Now, let's get to What's Still Hot with Stephen Stumpf.
What's Still Hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
There he is at Stephen_Stumpf right here on Twitter, on X. He was at Indianapolis. I almost said Charlotte. That's where you live. You are in Charlotte, but you were at Indianapolis this past weekend. You're actually heading to Iowa this weekend upcoming as well. So, but glad to have you on. Let's dive right into a lot of headlines in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. We'll start sort of in reverse order of the two big headlines, the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Right before we're recording this on Wednesday, of course, it comes out on Thursday. Kaulig Racing, and I think you can describe it as a surprise announcement. Announced they are releasing Josh Williams effective immediately. They will have a rotation of drivers through the final remaining 12 races of the NASCAR season. It appears that Carson Hocevar will drive this weekend in Iowa. I don't know if it's necessarily shocking that they seem to be parting ways. Josh Williams mainly underperformed his time with Colleague Racing, but I feels like, Stephen, the shocking part is the timing of it, not letting him finish the season with the team. Your overall reaction to this announcement, and why Colleague might have pulled the trigger, pull the plug this point in the season.
Yeah, first of all, I agree. I'm not surprised that Josh Williams and Colleague parted ways, but I'm surprised that it happened right now, right when the playoffs are about to start. It's not very often that we see a mid-season firing or mid-season release like this. So that was the biggest part. But I thought if something happened, I thought it would have been at like the end of this season. But as we saw, the results just haven't been there, and obviously Colleague has struggled a lot this year. But like Christian Eckes, Daniel Dye, they're two rookies, and they've had better stats than Josh. They've scored 3 times as many top 10s as him this year. So, and I think the big thing too is that Josh was kind of performing about the same this year as last year, and last year was a disappointing season as well. So, I'm not surprised that that Colleague pulled the trigger, but I'm surprised that it happened now. But I guess for Colleague, maybe part of their plan was, now we have the playoffs. Now we have 12 races left in the season, so maybe this is time to see where they stand. With more experienced drivers in the field like Hocevar, and maybe to try and find someone to take the ride for 2026.
Obviously, I would expect it's Cup drivers heavy in this rotation. Maybe like an AJ Allmendinger at the road courses. Obviously, Hocevar driving this weekend. But that you could see their future driver before you know it in that 11 car before the end of the season. The other big news in the NASCAR Xfinity Series came out last night, and it was, again, not shocking news after you watched the incident and you were there. Austin Hill officially suspended one race by NASCAR. Austin Dillon will fill in the 21 this weekend. RCR will not appeal it. And then obviously the bigger part of this is he will not be able to earn playoff points throughout the remainder of the regular season. Plus he loses all, I think it was 21 playoff points that he accrued. He was 5th in the points at this point. So he was kind of guaranteed at least more points, depending on where he finished in the regular season point standing. Ultimately, it felt like NASCAR had no choice, but how big of an effect could this have on Austin Hill's season in terms of coming playoff time and advancing with really no security net?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm not surprised that this was the ruling. It seemed pretty obvious. Like, I was watching on a big screen outside, and like after 2 seconds of seeing, I was like, wait, did he just turn left? And evidently NASCAR felt the same. So, but and this is a new rule this year. We've seen suspensions for the left rear hooks, like Chase Elliott against Denny Hamlin at Charlotte 2 years ago. Bubba Wallace against Kyle Larson at Vegas 3 years ago. But this is the first year that we've had the playoff points taken away, and it's going to be a really huge hit because Austin Hill had 21 playoff points accumulated. He's 4th in the standings. He'd get about another 8, so that's 30 points down the drain come September. And if he wins another race or gets more playoff points there, that's going to be even more points down the drain. And having that 30-point cushion is so important. That's a lot of times that's the difference between being able to advance despite having trouble and having a rough time and not having any chance of advancing. So it was a very poor decision on his part. I'd say the punishment is deserved, and he's going to be, they're going to have that 21 team, and they're going to have to be nearly perfect to make it to Phoenix. It's not going to be as easy as it was in years past.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to. Obviously, it helps. I think Talladega for them will be in the final round, so you assume he's the favorite there as well. He obviously, I believe, won it. Was it Vegas last year that got him into the Final Four? But a tougher hill to climb this season for Austin Hill. The pun was right there. A tougher hill for him to climb this year for Austin Hill. I should have doubt that it was right there, and I messed up. But some Cup Series news: Jordan Bianchi at the Athletic, who's pretty good at this stuff, is reporting that the Mexico City race, because of mainly the World Cup being in Mexico City next year, during this time, will not have a Cup race in 2026. As in, it will head to Chicagoland, the return to Chicagoland, which appears right now. We don't know the exact date. I think the rumor is it would be July 4th weekend, which would be interesting. But overall, again, I don't know if this was a shocking report because obviously the World Cup's going on. But what do you think about NASCAR's return to Chicagoland possible in 2026?
I think the moment it was announced that the Chicago Street Course would not be returning for 2026, it seemed like, Chicagoland was the next track up to be added to the schedule because Chicago is the third largest media market. It's a huge place to be, even if you're not in downtown Chicago like Chicagoland is. It's quite a ways out from there, but it's important to be there and just, and also I think about how, since the removal of Auto Club and probably not getting that short track anytime soon, NASCAR's been gone from that second largest market, and they rectified that by getting San Diego next year. But yeah, but I think for Chicagoland, it wasn't much of a surprise. Also, I think even Carson Hocevar was talking on Twitch about a month ago saying, I'm excited to go back there next year. And I'm looking forward to it. There's obviously, from the photos I've seen of the track, there's going to be some work that needs to be done to get it up to par, in terms of the track and the pavement itself. But I mean, we've all seen the next gen car. We've seen what it can do. We've seen its limitations, and we know that tracks like Chicagoland are the places where they will shine the best. And so I think so I'm very excited to see it back. I think it's going to be a great race, and it'll be good. It's so weird to say this, but it's going to be great to have another mile and a half on the schedule.
Yeah, I think, and with this car and the way it drives on a mile and a half, you feel like it's going to have some success there. Well, a guy who had success this weekend, of course, was Bubba Wallace, and he is our feature this week for our soundbite of the week. Given his, we'll go to his opening statement from the press conference this past weekend at Indianapolis.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm gonna bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track races.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
This one's really cool. I'm more slap out, if you couldn't tell. I'm just proud of the team, proud of the effort put in each and every week. People pushing me to be better. The biggest thing that gets lost is believing in self. And I'll say those last 20 laps, there was ups and downs of telling myself, you're not going to be able to do it. And I hate that I'm that way, but I pushed myself to be the absolute best. And when the caution came out, my spotter, love him to death. He said the 12 got clear of the pack, keep making pace. I was like, okay, so it's going to be me and Blaney here. Caution comes out, Blaney's nowhere to be found, and it's the 5. So I was like, what the hell was he talking about? So once I seen that it was Larson, I knew I'd have to roll the sleeves up. He won here last year, and he's arguably the best in the field. I have no problem saying that. I respect the hell out of what he does, how he drives. He pushes us all to be that good. So to beat the best, we had to be the best today, and we were able to come out on top. So today was a surreal feeling. Pre-race, I told Dale and those guys on TV, like, I rode around and under the parade lap in the truck, and I didn't hear any noise. It was very weird, something I've never experienced, and I had the mentality that if this was ours to take today. I heard a lot of people say some good things that I kind of latched onto. Doug Bowles, he mentioned 2005, Tony Stewart won. 2015, Kyle Busch won. Legends win on the 5. I'm not calling myself a legend, but it worked out. So just so thankful for the opportunity. I appreciate MJ, Denny, Curtis, Gene. There's so much going on, and we're able to just show up and compete. And, you guys ask each and every week, especially Jordan, you got any news on what's going on? And I don't care. I just go out and race. All I've known was for 23 years, just go race, no matter what's being said, no matter how many points I'm up on the cut line. Yes, it's there, but when you strap the helmet in, you just go and drive and give it your absolute all. So I have nothing left in the tank. I had a little bit of fuel left in the tank, but it's just a monumental win for our team, and I'm just proud to be holding the steering wheel for them.
Yeah, you can tell the energy dump that he went through either at the end of that race and celebrating that win by just his voice and even his face. I know you were there, Stephen. You could just look at the exhaustion. Granted, he was still very excited. This win by Bubba Wallace feels like, not all wins are equal in NASCAR. Obviously, the Daytona 500, the Brickyard being a crown jewel event, but even this being just a crown, this feels even bigger than a crown jewel win necessarily. How impactful do you think this win is for Bubba Wallace and for 23XI, where they're in the middle of a season where they are suing the sport they are a part of, and they win arguably their second biggest race of the year, maybe their third if you want to say the champ race is second behind the Daytona 500. This seems like at least the most impactful win in terms of the tentacles that will come from it for this season, and maybe a most impactful win we've seen in the sport in quite some time.
Well, for Bubba Wallace, first and foremost, it's a huge win. And he broke a 100 race winless drought to do it. And it's in those 100 races before this. It's not like he wasn't contending. There were certainly some races. There were certainly a ton of races, like Homestead this year, Martinsville this year, Texas 2 years ago, where he got beat on that final restart by William Byron. He's had those races here and there, but they, just for whatever reason, the winning circle it didn't happen. And you saw Bubba talk about how, a lot of times he can be a pretty confident, sensitive driver. He can be his own worst enemy. So you have 100 races, all of that weighing down, and you have to, after having a 3-second lead, he had to beat arguably the best driver and the defending winner of the race. If he wanted to seal the deal and return to victory lane, and he did that flawlessly. He nailed the final 2 restarts. He saved just enough fuel when guys like William Byron and Josh Berry ran out, and it was just, as you saw, from his emotion, from how exhausted he was in that presser, just a huge win for him. And they're in the playoffs, and yeah, like you said, for 23XI, it's huge too. They've had a tough season. Tyler Reddick's been fast at times, but he hasn't won. But the 23 is now locked in the playoffs. The 45 is also most likely to be locked in unless we get like 3 new winners in the last 4 races, which I don't foresee happening. But yeah, again, from pretty much all those storylines together, it's a monumental win, and I think one that we're going to be talking about for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost I don't want to say taken from him, but it almost was. He almost lost it just because a random rain shower decided to pop up with 5 laps to go. Like, that's insane to think about. That could have been a possible outcome, but it was not. He wins. He locks himself into the playoffs, making an interesting playoff bubble, heading into a all RFK battle for the final playoff spot. Steve, you got one more thing?
Oh yeah, I also wanted to add it like even if it didn't rain, even if it ended at 160 laps and he won by like 3 seconds over Larson, it was still going to be an impressive win. He qualified second. He had great pace all weekend. He had great pace Sunday. They nailed the pit strategy. He was going to deserve that win, but like being able to, having that rain shower, having that surefire win taken away, and being able to do those restarts, it's a win that counts the same, but I think it felt that much sweeter for him. Probably felt much sweeter for him to be able to do it that way.
Well, Stephen, we need to wrap this podcast up, and before we get to the checkered flag, do want to plug Raceline that is returning to the Front Stretch YouTube channel. How about Rick Benjamin coming to Front Stretch? 40 years of experience as a racing TV play-by-play and analyst, and now he's back putting drivers in the hot seat. His former show, Raceline, makes its return to streaming this Thursday night on the Front Stretch YouTube channel. Check out Rick's interview catching up with Randy LaJoie, one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers, and now a safety innovator within the sport with the joy of seating. The Raceline 2.0 is back and better than ever. Check out future guests Ricky Craven, Ken Schrader, and many more as Rick and Raceline race their way back on the airwaves. That's Raceline, premiering this Thursday night at 9 p.m. only on the Front Stretch YouTube channel. Check that out this Thursday. You know, this comes up on your podcast feed on Thursday. You can just listen to it as well. Check that out there as well. But let's get to it. Let's wrap up the pod with the checkered flag.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Anything you want to rant, rave, or review about, Stephen Stumpf? The floor is yours.
I've thought about it for a while, and I'm actually going to do a stat sheet on this tonight. But the in-season challenge was something I was really excited for coming into this year, and it just, the way it happened, it really just fell flat. Well, first of all, I think hosting Atlanta as the first race was a very terrible idea because, as we saw, you know, almost every single matchup that day got decided by that huge 23, 25, however many cars it was, wreck. And it took out some of the biggest names too. And upsets are cool, but if all of the biggest stars are out, no one's going to be interested by the final rounds. And I feel like that's partially what happened. But it also, there was the alt cast that TNT did, but it seemed like during the actual race broadcast itself, and even during the Brickyard 400, where it was two final guys going for $1 million for their teams, it just felt like there wasn't really a way to cover. They didn't know the best way to cover it. It kind of felt like an afterthought too many times with how, you know, hyped up this was and how, you know, how grand this is supposed to be. I also think the seeding itself, the way they did it, you know, best finish in the three races before kind of messed with things a little bit. I think just the simple top 32 in points, seed them that way would have been best. And so with all of that, that's exactly what I'm going to do for the next 5 weeks. I'm going to do another bracket challenge with the top 32 in points after Indy, and, you know, do the same 5 races ending at the Southern 500 to see who would win this challenge. Obviously, no money is awarded. I don't have any money to give either, but I want to see, you know, given different races, given the seeding this way, I want to see what the result would be if this style, which is what Denny originally advocated for last year a lot. Want to see how this would turn out.
Interesting. You check that out, frontstretch.com, the website. It's out right now as we release this because we recorded Wednesday. So Wednesday night he's writing it. Thursday it'll be out. So check it out right now here as well. I just want to give a shout out to Stuart Friesen, hoping for a safe recovery. He has sustained multiple serious injuries. I know a broken pelvis is part of it. I think he broke his leg as well from a scary incident up in Canada this past week at a dirt race. This was obviously after he got disqualified at IRP this past weekend. And unfortunately, the appeal got upheld. This is a man who was locked in for the playoffs, but it appears based off the serious injuries he sustained, he is not going to be racing anytime soon. The good news is I know Todd Bodine on Wednesday tweeted out a photo of him getting into an ambulance, and he's heading back to the States where he'll have more surgeries in New York. Scary situation, scary wreck for Friesen. Glad he is doing as best as he can given the circumstances, and hoping for a safe recovery. And it appears we will not see him racing the rest of the season, at least for a considerable amount of time. My assumption is they'll have someone fill his his car because it's technically still alive for the owners playoffs. But definitely something scary indeed. Something that's not scary is Stephen Stumpf. He writes great for frontstretch.com. He's heading to Iowa this weekend for more coverage at Stephen_Stumpf. Stephen, you plug the article that you're going to write for frontstretch.com, so don't have to ask you about that. But what are you looking forward to this weekend as NASCAR heads to Iowa?
Just looking forward to a good race. Last year, the big concern was that they only repaved like half the track in the corners, and IndyCar, it kind of made the race bad, but the Cup race, yes, last year was still awesome. I'm also looking forward to much cooler weather than it was in Indy, knock on wood. That's what the forecast calls for at the moment. But, it also, watching the IndyCar race this year, the track's pavement really aged. It got much less darker, got much lighter. And so I'm curious to see how that affects the racing and if we'll get close to the Iowa of old, which was still fantastic, as we continue to race on this surface.
There you have it. For Stephen Stumpf at Trey Lyle VT, you can follow me. Thanks so much to Lee Diffey and all the folks at NBC Sports. Shout out to Caleb producing this thing. We're off for now. We'll be back next week for another episode of Bring the Heat.
I'm Caleb Barnes with frontstretch.com. Come back soon for more great racing videos, and if you like us, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.